Welcome back. H1N1 and even the perennial flu prove a real challenge to health providers.
There's no denying an urgent need to find new drugs both to treat and prevent influenza.
Now, one of our guests this morning made the discovery a few years ago that chloroquine can stop the flu virus in lab experiments.
And it's also a drug that has been used since the 1950s to prevent and treat malaria. Well, an important trial is currently underway in Singapore, and researchers are seeing if tests of chloroquine on 1,500 volunteers will bear the same encouraging results as those taken in the lab.
And we have the principal researchers with us today. Good morning, Drs. Annalise Wildersmith, Ooi Eng Yong and Gerard Wong. Thanks so much for your time.
So let's start off. Tell us a bit about this trial, or actually the discovery first. Dr. Ooi, how did that happen? Did you just chance upon it?
Well, it's been thought for some time that chloroquine could work as a drug that would act against viruses. And conceptually, what happens is that we know that chloroquine changes the acidity of certain compartments in the cell. And often it is in these compartments that the replication processes of the virus starts. Right? So if you then change the acidity, essentially you make the environment a lot less hospitable for the virus to replicate. And therefore, if they can't grow, they can't cause disease. So what we did in the lab then was to test if chloroquine could do this against influenza at the doses safe for human use.
Right.
And that was what we found.
And it did?
It did.
So your wish came through. In a way, what you were searching for did actually happen, which in the scientific world actually is quite rare, right? I think it's a one in the don't know how many.
Why is this trial important, this clinical trial that you're conducting?
Well, it's important in the sense that I think the clinical trial is the gold standard, as it were, to prove that something actually works or it doesn't work. And that's why we need this trial to know whether chloroquine can be used to prevent influenza effectively. If it can, then we have an added weapon against influenza, at least to prevent it. Particularly important in the sense of in the context of pandemics, where a new strain of influenza emerges and there is no vaccine against this strain. And typically vaccine takes about 6 to 9 months to be produced. And so during this period where the world is waiting for a vaccine, if you have something that would at least slow down the pandemic or even prevent it, you would save many lives and you would reduce the cost to the economy.
Well, let's talk a bit about the clinical trial. We hear this is a fairly large test base. 1,500 people, that's quite unusual, is that right?
1,500 people is definitely a large trial, a challenging trial, but we need such a big number to give a definitive answer whether chloroquine does work in the prevention of flu.
So what's going to happen, with these people? Normally the trials occur with fewer numbers, but in this case you're saying you need the large number because I guess you want a more certain confirmation in that.
It's a number that was scientifically calculated to really answer the question whether it works. So half of these 1,500 will be on the drug, chloroquine, and the other half will actually be on a placebo.
And so far, we know we're just halfway through the trial at the moment. Have you had what's been the response so far, and can we draw any conclusions? Is it a bit too early, Dr. Wong?
It's too early to make any comments on the trial because we are still taking recruitment, and so the results will only be known when we analyze the results. But we've had positive feedback from the participants who've come onto the trial. They've been quite happy with the arrangements, and it's been a simple matter to log on to the website for the trial. That's www.chip.sg, and I think we haven't mentioned it yet. CHIP is an acronym for chloroquine for influenza prevention. Right. So there are only 2 simple clinic visits, and the participants are reimbursed for time and travel expenses, and they found it quite easy to participate in the trial because they can also stay in touch with the follow-up via the website and also participate by having online data entry of their symptoms.
Okay.
So it's a very simple thing for them to do.
Well, I'm just going to hold up right here now. These are the sample of I don't know if we can zoom in and catch it, the sort of the pills. I guess it just looks like any ordinary, you wouldn't know what it was. But as you're mentioning, the participants who take part in this, the steps that they go through, how long is the trial duration for the participants?
The trial is for 12 weeks, so there's a visit at the beginning and at the end, and they will take this drug once per week. So it's overall a very simple trial, very easy to do, not so much time commitment, with a drug that is known to be safe. It has a history of more than 50 years of safety data, so it's overall a well-known drug, a safe drug. And what the participants also like very much is the online system. Right. So you make your appointment online, and then every week there is a one online, very short diary that they can fill in.
So there are no side effects?
This is overall a very safe drug, and we're giving it at a very low dose. So it's just a once weekly dose. So it's much lower than a normal treatment dose. And so far we've seen very few side effects. And for those who did have side effects, they were very mild.
Okay.
Now, we know the only other drugs that are sort of out there are things like Tamiflu. What kind of results are you hoping to achieve from this clinical trial? Is it going to be on par? Is it going to surpass that? I mean, what kind of an outcome would be ideal, I guess?
Well, I think what's important about this trial is we're not comparing against Tamiflu. I think the world, we're not looking for a better drug, we're looking for another drug. Essentially, what's happened with, as you might know, with Tamiflu is that, you know, as you use the drug, you see resistance. The virus develops resistance against the drug, and that, if you look at the history of infectious diseases, it is the theme, right? If you use an antibiotic, the bacteria develops resistance. And so what we've learned in the treatment of HIV and TB is that you need to use more than one drug. You need to use 2 or 3 to prevent that resistance from emerging. And so what we are hoping is that that chloroquine will work and will be an added weapon that we have against influenza.
You must be getting a lot of interest from overseas and pharmaceutical companies. What's the response been so far, do you think?
The international scientific world has shown very keen interest. In fact, on a recent visit by Dr. David Heyman, who was the previous WHO Assistant Director General, he saw the trial and he was very interested, very excited that we're doing such a large-scale trial.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this trial is only taking place in Singapore, right? Will that kind of skew things a little bit? Because I guess it's we still have a fairly mixed population here, but still it's largely Asian. I mean, how's that going to factor in?
Well, the chloroquine, the way it works is that it doesn't target any genes. It's not specific to a certain protein that is found in some races, but less so in others. What it does is that it's just a very general effect on the cell. It changes the acidity, and therefore it makes the environment less hospitable for the virus. So in that sense, we don't think that there will be any bias in terms of its effect against various ethnic or race
and
groups.
Age, young, old? I mean, where does it stand? What kind of age range are you looking at for the participants?
For this trial, for the CHIP trial, now we enroll from the age of 18 to 65.
Okay.
And these are healthy subjects that we are looking at to participate.
Okay, so not people who already have the flu and kind of generally you're just okay. Okay. I always wondered how that really works, but okay. Well, thank you for coming in this morning, sharing this.
Look forward to the results
Thank you.
in a couple of months, I believe. And you too can be part of this major clinical trial. You can do so by registering online, as mentioned, at chip.sg.
Well, for a short break here on Primetime Morning, do keep it right here on the channel. Still lots more coming right up. See you in a bit.